My name is Jared Berenstein, and I am here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics, and nobody's going to judge you or roast you or try to debate you or make fun of you or anything of that nature. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. This is not a show for fighting. This is not a show for debating. What is up, Mia? Good to see you again. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and fight each other and call each other names and try to prove that one of them is stupid and the other one is smart. That is not what this show is. This show is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. What's up, Muzz King? Great to see you again as well. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. There's no such thing as a dumb question. It can be as simple or as complicated as you like. I might not be able to answer all your questions, but I will answer the ones that I can as sincerely and, not without prejudice as I can. So just throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I don't judge, I don't roast, I don't debate, I don't harass, I don't bully. That is not this kind of show. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and call each other names and they try to own each other and try to win debates against each other. That is not what we do here. In this show, we just try to engage on the substance and we try to establish a shared reality. John Bradley says, what do you see as a viable solution to Iran's situation at this point? I mean, I think we're kind of over the barrel right now. So the difficult thing is that we have a president who is not willing to do things that are difficult, especially if they make it clear that he is not good at his job. But I think that that's going to be like step number one is going to have to be to eat crow a little bit because we're in a really bad position. But yeah, I think that going back to a version of the JCPOA that maybe gives a little bit more to Iran than the original JCPOA is probably a really good start. What's up, Average Joe? Weekend was pretty good. The new Twilight, no, I am not, and I cannot talk any more about that, otherwise my lives get reported. Cowboy Satanist says, I know the left has been beating the drum of the 25th Amendment. Do you see the need? I don't think it's just the left that's been doing that. I mean, the left have been talking for a long time that Trump is unfit, he's corrupt, he's incompetent. There's a million reasons to get rid of him. But I think that the 25th Amendment call are coming from people like Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and stuff. What's up, Ecuadorian? Good to see you again as well. But yeah, 100%. We need to be vocal about the reality that Trump, the president, should not be in charge anymore. And this is not like a difference of opinion. This is not like I'm a Democrat and he's a Republican, so I think he should be impeached. It's like he has a cryptocurrency. He's selling political pardons. He's doing war crimes. Like take your pick, man. There's like 1,000 reasons here. All right. T Glove says socialism or capitalism. How about a little bit of both? Jop says, hi, mate. Not sure if you know much about UK politics. What's your opinion on the Green Party? So it's a little complicated. I don't know a ton about it. I will say that it appears as though the Green Party in the UK is doing an amazing job. And if I live there, I would probably support them. I have to caveat that with the fact that the Green Party in America is a joke, and nobody should support the American Greens. All right, Unknown Lady says he should be done now. Agree. Some dude says, did you expect that a lot of Christians taking Trump's side against the Pope? Yeah, there's a difference between somebody who's Christian and somebody who's a MAGA Christian. There's some fluidity there, in the Ten Commandments where, it says like, thou shalt not have any other gods besides me. There were some MAGA Christians who were like, well, obviously he's cool with us also worshiping Trump, Luna says, do you have a source that he is selling pardons? Yes, Luna, but I don't have that stuff memorized. So if you send me a DM, I will happily shoot that over to you. Yankee, good to see you again, says Trump pardons of his pals that commit fraud has cost the victims millions. It's just wrong. 100% agree with that. Really, Eliante says Trump is doing amazing. You Democrats are ruining America. I don't see how we can be because we don't have any political power right now. Brian Barbita, great to see you again, says, why do you believe Republicans typically win the Catholic vote? I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. I think that for a long time, the religious right has been kind of like carving out this space by which they say that the only way that you can be a good American is to be white and a Christian and a Republican voter. And a lot of that sort of like Protestant work ethic, worship of the wealthy is kind of baked into the conservative Republican political philosophy. I think that's, there was an easy layup of associating Republicanism with being pro-life because so many people are using their religion as an excuse to, stop women from getting the medical care that they need. There's a bunch of reasons, but there's also, it's largely hypocritical and it is significantly inorganic in that it is useful to a certain number of people to push that in order to maintain their power and influence and their check, and so they do that. Spyros says, hi, what's your opinion on Angela Merkel? I don't know a ton about her. She always seemed pretty okay to me. No real complaints as far as I can tell. Steel Mog says, what's up with all this uncontrolled immigration into the first world? It's like governments want to create a subservient cattle world populace that work for next to nothing. What's your take? I think it's unlikely that uncontrolled immigration is because the governments want to create a subservient cattle world populace. I think what's more likely is that first world nations have extracted resources and created instability in the third world. And now a whole bunch of people who are just looking for a better life away from that chaos and away from all that fighting and cartels and shit like that, they're trying to move to the nice places that have extracted all of their resources. All right, Ecuadorian says, what are the commandments? Is that a fruit or vegetable? I'll tell you about it later. Average Joe says, after last week's War Powers Act that failed because of one Democratic vote, have you been more open-minded regarding the Democratic Party being controlled opposition? No. Average Joe, no, absolutely not. Because the Democratic Party has the politicians who are standing up to the Republican Party. The Democratic Party does different things when they are in charge. Yes, I will agree. It is sus as hell that the one vote that they needed happened to be there. But I'm still not convinced until somebody can tell me Chuck Schumer told me, to be the sacrificial vote for this. I just don't buy it. Steel Mog says, no cartels in India, though. Okay, well, I said a bunch of things. Everything that I say does not apply to everything else that I say. Chili William Muzking, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Low Dairy says, so what do you think, the war is over or Trump is lying as usual? Trump is lying as usual. That is always the answer to that question. Jonathan says, do you think if Al Gore were elected, today's political landscape would be different? Yeah, it would definitely be better, I think. Eric Jinting says, hey, Jarrett, did you still have razor blade? I don't know what you mean by that. Oh, are you saying because I need a little trim up down there? I'm going to the barber today. Sunnybrook says, has there ever been a case of bottom right political compass working? Not as far as not as far as I know. But I'm also not really sure what you mean by bottom right. Let's see here. Sunnybrook says, what is centrism? Centrism is kind of like, it's not about being Republican. It's not about being a Democrat. There's some good ideas on both sides. And, we should try to do things that are compromises in the middle. It's not a great political philosophy, in my opinion, but that's probably the simplest explanation for it. Chris B. Bacon says, is the draft possible? It is possible. I don't know if it's likely, but it's definitely possible. CS says, I haven't seen you online in a while. Did the baby come? No, the baby did not come. I was unjustly banned from lives for 4 days last week because of some bullshit that I'll happily get into on the Discord if you like. Jonathan says, thoughts on Gavin Newsom being the Democratic candidate for 2028? He's not even close to being my first choice, but if he does win the primary, then I'm happily going to vote for him over whatever ding-dong the Republicans put up. Sandy Brooks says, are you authoritarian or a liberalist? I'm a liberalist. User, a whole bunch of numbers, says, ethnic, question mark? That's an interesting question. Jimmy Z says, is getting money out of politics possible? Yes, but in order to do that, we have to vote for the people who will do that. And we got to stop voting for the Republican Party, who is that is their entire modus operandi. Pulse ME says, do you support the New York mayor? Yes, I do. Jonathan says, predictions for the midterms. Political predictions are completely worthless. Let's get out there and do the work for what we want the outcome to be. Spira says, do you think housing prices should go down and monthly payments higher? I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Spira. So you asking me if I advocate for like increasing insurance payments, but lowering the principal? Like, I don't know. It seems really specific. Earl Steinberg says, you support the mayor? Really, Stein? So, Earl, what you are doing here is anti-Semitic, and it's also kind of Islamophobic. I would really appreciate it if you didn't do stuff like that in the future. Eric says, what do you think of social democracy? I don't know. Is it the same as being a democratic socialist? Sunny Brooks says, rate these debaters 1 to 3. Dean Withers, Mehdi Hassan, and Charlie Kirk. I probably go Mehdi, Dean, and then Charlie. Charlie's a distant third, though, because he would lie in order to win debates. Earl Steinberg says, so I'm not allowed to be anti-Semitic? Yeah, no, you're not allowed to be anti-Semitic or homophobic or Islamophobic or racist or misogynistic. If you are, I'll boot you. Jack Shelton says, where is Obama? You know, doing things that private citizens do. Kriegsman says, should we start the naturalization and deporting communists under the 1965 Communist Act? No, I believe that punishing people for their political philosophies is a violation of the First Amendment. Svetslav Malamov says, what do you think of Bulgarian elections? Don't know anything about it, so sorry about that. Joel T says, I'm allowed to be a piece of shit. Accurate, Joel T. Jimmy Z says, popular vote versus electoral college, popular vote all day. Slash says, is Mamdani the best mayor? I don't know if he's the best mayor, but he's pretty darn good. All right, Jonathan says, what do you think of foreign PACs having such an influence on American politics? I'm against it, but I'm also against the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Carlos Gese says, what about Venezuela? What about Venezuela? Joel T. Yeah, we'll keep the hits coming, Joel. Earl Steinberg says, we can't critique them, but they're allowed to do whatever they want, ? I'm sorry, are you trying to suggest that I think that criticizing any Jewish person is not allowed and that therefore Jews are allowed to do whatever they want? Earl Steinberg, this is your last warning. You can stop this shit or you can leave. All right, Mick, good to see you again, says, what do you think about the deal Joe Rogan is involved and Trump signed? I mean, this is just obvious pay to play. Like, Trump has done a lot of things that have made Joe Rogan go out on his show and say that he doesn't like Donald Trump anymore. And now Donald Trump is doing things to try to get Joe Rogan back on his side. And it is working because Joe Rogan is substanceless. Steel Mog says, what's your take on keeping Japan Japanese? I hope they don't become Muslim majority like Europe. You know, Steel Mog, it seems a little bit like you have a very aggressive anti-immigrant philosophy, and I would encourage you to open your mind to the possibility that immigrants are actually a positive. Japan has always been a very isolationist kind of nation. Like, they are famously, you know, friendly to you in a customer service situation, but they're not willing to sort of like welcome you into the community. And it's not really my place to tell Japan what they are or are not allowed to do. I just think it's probably better if we're all a little bit chiller about people moving to different places. Jonathan says, I'm doing a major in politics and international relations this fall. Any advice? Avoid right-wing media. Stephen Peterson says, were you surprised the Iranian ceasefire only lasted 1 day because of U.S. stoppage passes for boats? Not surprised at all. The Trump administration is not good at foreign policy. You know, use a whole bunch of numbers. I can't read those letters. Marcus says, thoughts on Keir Starmer as UK Prime Minister? You know, I think there's probably some very good faith criticisms you could make of Keir Starmer. I worry, though, that people in the UK suffer from the same disease that we suffer here in America of, where people on the left get criticized for everything and people on the right get criticized for nothing. Okay, V2 says, would you rather communism or capitalism? Why not both? Danny says, what do you think about socialism? If socialism is things like universal health care and universal basic income, I am for it. Earl Steinberg says, did you get what you voted for? You know, you've annoyed me, Earl, so now you're out of here. Animal Deck says, why not sequester the means of production? I think that we can do better. I think that we can just pass laws that say that, you know, employees need to be paid more than, you know, 1/300th of what the CEO makes. That's The lowest paid employees deserve a seat on the board of directors, maybe tax incentives for employee-owned companies, stuff like that. Misty Cloud says, thoughts on Somalis in America? They're great. I've got no problem with immigrants. Sunny Brooks says, do you believe in Thomas Malthus theory? I don't know what that is. Eric says, let's settle this. Everyone is equal. Yeah, everyone's equal. Sounds good to me. Danny says, what do you think about artificial intelligence? It's not being done in a very responsible way right now. Obviously, there's an imperative to beat hostile nations to having this incredible technology, but not at the sacrifice of people's towns getting poisoned because of the chemical runoffs from the data centers, not at the cost of a handful of private companies becoming the owners of that technology, not at the cost of there being zero regulations and safety concerns, not at the cost of letting the Pentagon use AI to pick targeting for autonomous drones and shit like that. Like, there are regulations that we should be implementing yesterday for artificial intelligence. Additionally, as we are looking, even if this was being done responsibly, we would need to be doing something with the working population who will not be able to make a living soon, and ergo, universal basic income. Steel Mug says, I've seen what happened to the UK and France. I don't see any benefit in mass immigration. Why do you think UK and France is better off now? Well, immigrants do not use... immigrants put more into tax revenue than they take out in social services. They commit crimes at lower rates than naturalized citizens. I don't really know... I haven't been to the UK or France in a long time. I don't really see a whole bunch of different kinds of people being in those countries to be a bad thing. But also, I don't live there, so, I just think that the world is better if it's a melting pot. Okay, Senator Brooks says, how many immigrants a year do you think is healthy for the USA? I don't know if there's a specific number that I have in mind, but, there's plenty of land in America that is not being utilized. Okay, Antoine says, what do you think about the current situation in Lebanon? Just another example of the Netanyahu administration doing war crimes, throwing shoulders, trying to take over the entire Middle East, trying to annex territory, torturing, and, ruining the lives of brown people everywhere. Like, yeah, fucking Israel, get your shit together and get rid of Netanyahu. Throw him in jail, please. Alvar says, are you pro-life? No, I am pro-choice. But even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democratic politicians because Democratic policies actually decrease abortions. Republican policies both increase abortions and they make pregnancy more dangerous for women, even the women that actually want to keep the women that they're getting pregnant with. What's up, Mikhail Meme? Good to see you again. Steel Mox says, they call EU the rape capital of the world ever since they started... No, Steel Mog, I don't buy that one tick. I do not buy it. I do not buy the idea that immigrants going to the UK and France and Europe in general is increasing grapes and essays. Like, I just don't buy it at all. That is a hardcore right-wing propaganda narrative. I just do not believe it. One tick. Let's see here. Peel Banana says, thoughts on Thomas Sankara. I don't know who that is. Sandy Brooks says, thoughts on nuclear energy? I think we should keep it around until we can transition to, fully solar and wind and hydroelectric and shit like that. I heard that they are messing with like little mini nuclear power plants that are a lot faster to build. But I do not think that we should be investing 10 years in building new massive nuclear power plants because in 10 years we could have 80% renewables. It doesn't really seem worth it, in my opinion. Okay, Johnny Scarp says, thoughts on Iranian government killing between 30,000 and 100,000 protesters. The Iranian government is not a good government to its citizens, but neither is the American government to its citizens. Now, which one's better and which one's worse? I'm not gonna wade into that debate, but nobody is saying that the war in Iran is bad because the government of Iran is great. People are saying it's bad because it was poorly planned, did not get congressional authorization, does not have any clear-cut goals, has caused untold death and destruction. It's cost American lives. It's cost Iranian lives. It's costing $1 billion a day. The Trump administration is straight up out here telling us we can't afford to make sure that you guys have childcare and healthcare and access to safe drinking water and food because we're so busy bombing brown people in the Middle East. Like, what the fuck? Have we not learned this lesson before with Iraq and Afghanistan? And those are at least well planned catastrophes. We're going to be fucking begging for this to only be a catastrophe on the level of Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, Michaela Meme says, what's your solution to inflation in your opinion? Tax the rich. Antoine Chidiak says, I'm Lebanese. We're not brown people. All right, well, not everything I say is in relation to everything else that I say. Aquiat says, are you a Christian? And if you're not, what do you think of it? I think about Christianity the same way that I think about Catholicism and Judaism and being Muslimism and Islam and Taoism and Buddhism, etc. Every religion is fine so long as you are not doing the bad shit, the extremist shit where you're like murdering people or trying to force them to be in your religion and stuff like that. I was actually raised Catholic, but I'm not a practicing member of any religion at the moment. Iad H says, do you believe that Israel is an apartheid state? Yeah, it's obvious that it is. I don't really understand why people are still arguing this point. Sandy Brooks says, would you push a red button to unalive one random person for $500 million? Nah, that doesn't seem mean. That seems kind of mean, I might do it if I get to pick the person. Jinkster says, what would you do to stop all the fraud that comes with non-citizens? Non-citizens do less fraud, Jinkster, than citizens. So, like, the best thing we could do to stop fraud in America would be to replace every American citizen with an immigrant. That's obviously, I'm being a little silly here because when you are dealing with statistics, it doesn't work out exactly like that. But that's my point. Jinkster says, Somalia. Yeah, the fraud that is happening is not the fault of Somalians. Jinkster, I would encourage you to get your news from different sources. Direct Luminosity says, I don't think third parties split the vote as much as you think. Data suggests Kamala would have lost if the Green Party didn't exist and voted Democrats. The Green Party is a psyop. Okay, Direct Luminosity, I agree, but the third party votes lost Clinton the election in 2016. Like, I do not believe that is at all up for debate. If you steal some of the vote, if you split some of the votes, even if it's not the deciding factor in you losing the election, I still think that's bad. I agree with you that we should only vote third party locally if we organize in the group the way that Zoran did. Zoran was not a third party candidate. Zoran was the Democratic nominee. You have to build grassroots movements instead of just expecting people to vote. I completely agree with that. Let's get ranked choice voting so we don't have to worry about spoiler candidates going forward. Sandy Brooks says, do you believe Epstein was an Israeli spy? I don't know if he was or wasn't. I think more likely he was in business for himself, and because he had such valuable blackmail material on extremely wealthy and powerful people, then he probably worked with a lot of intelligence agencies, including Mossad. Cooter says, concentration camps for socialist communists. So that's not a really productive thing to say. Let's see here. Sonny Brooks says, what is your ethnicity? On my mom's side, Italian. On my dad's side, Jewish. Megalodon Corp says, Epstein said he worked for Rothschild, not himself. I mean, I don't know if he said that. Even if he did say it, he's not a real reliable source. All right, so looks like a sad face and a heart with a bandage on it. Says, do you think the Iranian Islamic regime deserves to collapse? I am not for countries collapsing because that causes a lot of death and destruction and pain and disease for just like regular ass people who just want to live their fucking lives. I do think that we should be doing things to encourage the Iranians to replace the people that are currently in charge with a more free and less dogmatic and totalitarian regime. But yeah, when states fail, bad things happen, and not just to marginalize people. Thank you, Direct Lumosity. I really like you too. All right, Big Boy Job Parker says, what are the negatives of Gavin Newsom presidential run? Would you support him? I wouldn't support him in the primary, but if he wins the primary, I will support him in the general because I'm sure he'll be a perfectly acceptable president. The negatives are different depending on who you're talking to. Like, I'm a progressive, so I don't like the things that he does that are more centrist, but, I have a buddy who's a centrist, and I we kind of compared lists of things that we liked and didn't like about Gavin Newsom, and they were basically completely opposite. Like I liked things that he hated, and he liked things that I hated. Ms. Gonna Be Alright says, have you seen that Elon Musk is now advocating for a high universal income? I mean, he's full of shit. I don't buy that at all. If that's really something that you wanted, then you would not spend your time and energy and money electing Republicans. Joel T says, what media/news outlets do you follow to stay informed? So I think the key, Joel, is two things. You want to have a diverse media diet, so maybe use a news aggregator like Ground News, and also at the same time you need to avoid right-wing media, because we have a bunch of data showing that right-wing media is the least accurate kind of media that you can get. Mitch says the podcast of Lotus Eaters is great. I don't know what that is. Yassine says, what do you think of socialism? If socialism is universal basic income and free public college and universal health care, then I'm for it. Ayad says, do people who are far right use the argument of they're stealing our culture as racism in disguise? I think that there are some people who know that they're full of shit when they make that argument, but I think that there are other people who have a very normal human reaction to seeing different kinds of people moving into their neighborhoods and doing things that they think are different or weird. And I think that is a natural human reaction, but you kind of learn that the benefits of incorporating new people into your community far outweighs the negative once you embrace it. And our leaders need to be sort of like, on the vanguard of that, instead of just stoking the flames of, racist shit. All right. Average Joe says, regarding the EU rape question, there's a study released this year titled Immigrant Background and Rape Conviction, a 21-year follow-up study in Sweden. Cannot wait to see the part 2 of this one, Average Joe. Dad says, right-wing is more inaccurate than left-wing. This sounds like more left-wing studies. So, Dad, there's no such thing as a left-wing study or a right-wing study. If a study is paid for by an organization that is trying to get a specific outcome, then obviously that study is sus and potentially inaccurate. But most studies come out of objective universities, and and those people are not trying to get left-wing outcomes. They're trying to show the truth, the reality. Okay, Antoine says, would you support a Christian resistance in Lebanon to defend against all outside Israelis, Syrians? I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Lebanon. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about that to opine, unfortunately. Adri says, why did Suharto invade East Timor? I don't know what that is. Naza says, politics is cope. Every election is rigged. Wasn't this proven? No. Naza, elections are not rigged. Elections are won by people going out and voting. And politics is not cope. Politics it has a basis in reality, where depending on who is in charge, your life can get either easier or harder. And so I think I want to advocate for people voting for people that will make all of our lives better instead of worse. Women were made to bang says, does host support my screen name? No, women are people, and it's fun to bang them if they would also like to bang you. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Ask some women what they think of your screen name, and then you let me know. Okay, Nem says, why did people vote for Trump even though it was his second term and he could do whatever he wants? So just it being his second term did not necessarily mean that he could do whatever he wants. The issue is that Congress and the Department of Justice and the judiciary are currently in the hands of Republican Trump loyalists, which means that they're going to allow him to do whatever he wants. In a normal administration, Congress would be a check. The Supreme Court would be a check on Donald Trump, but because the Republican Party is party over country, they are allowing Trump to do whatever he wants. And why do people vote for him? Misinformation, propaganda, the billionaire class, incumbency bias, lots of things. Let's see here. ZXK says opinions on Israel. Israel, as I understand it, is a beautiful country filled with incredible people. Unfortunately, their government is currently doing war crimes in G-side. Triska, Muzzking, and Allie, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. KVX says, should I vote Liberal, Democrats, or Green? I would say vote for the left-wing party that has the best chance of winning. And if I'm getting accurate information about UK politics, it's the Greens right now. Sarah J says, what do you think about Giorgia Meloni? Don't know enough to talk, so sorry. Sunnybrook says, didn't the CIA admit to rigging foreign elections? That's a little over my head, Sunnybrooks. But the CIA has definitely influenced foreign governments in the past in a way that's been very not great. Lindsay Reed and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And now it is finger hearts o'clock. Best part of the day. Okay, let's see here. Mitch, guys, the best left-wing party is the National Socialists. That's the name of the Nazi party, so don't vote for the National Socialists. I don't even think that they exist anymore. Okay, Poke Pete TCG says, would you ever vote for a true Republican, not some Trumper? I guess I would ask you what being a true Republican is, because as far as I can tell, the only thing that is consistent ethos for every Republican administration for the last 50 years has been tax cuts for the rich and cutting social services. And I think that that is a fundamentally unproductive, and it hasn't worked. It's like, how much more money do the wealthy people need before it starts trickling down, you know? So yeah, if you're only here to stand the Laffer curve and trickle-down economics and supply-side economics, then I'm like, no, absolutely not. I will vote against anybody, you know? Ooh, ready, let's see here. Average Joe still waiting on that part 2. Steel Mox is not sure if you saw this message or not before. Do you think Bernie would have beaten Trump in 2016 if the Democratic primary wasn't rigged and hijacked by Hillary? So the Democratic primary was not rigged and hijacked by Hillary. It is true that the DNC put their finger on the scale for Hillary, but I do not believe it had that much of an effect. Ms. Gonna Be All Right, Triska, and Jules, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. If it had been a closer election, I might be open to the arguments that the DNC is the reason why Hillary won that primary, but she really did run away with it. Now, would Bernie have beaten Trump? I don't know. Maybe. There's a lot of factors to consider. I think one of the reasons why Trump won is because he was an outsider candidate, and people want that. They want to vote for change. They want to vote for different. Now, Bernie would not have been somebody that people could look at and go, that's establishment versus Trump is the outsider. It would have been two outsiders facing off against each other. Now, would the Russia propaganda machine that was helping Trump win that election be so successful that they would even beat Bernie? I've got no idea. I would have loved to have seen that race, though. You know, like I campaigned for Bernie in the primary. Ooh, ready. Let's see here. Scrolling up. Mikhail Meme says, shouldn't Obama get all the critics Trump gets since he also used ICE deports illegal immigrants? Obama deported 3.1 million, Trump deported 1.2 million. So Mikhail Meme, it's not just about how many, it's about why and how. Obama told ICE and CPB to prioritize people who had broken the law and specifically people who had done violent crimes. Trump is saying, I want you to deport this many people a year. I don't give a shit if they've never done a crime before. I don't give a shit if they're here legally. I don't give a shit if they're citizens or veterans or whatever. Donald Trump tripled ICE's budget. Obama tried to rein in the abuses of ICE. Trump is allowing Stephen Miller to tell ICE they can do whatever the fuck they want without any kind of legal consequences. That is not what Obama did. Trump is building concentration camps right now for all of the people that ICE is illegally detaining, torturing, murdering, and by credible reports, SAing as well. So yeah, there are massive differences between the Trump administration's policy towards deportations and Obama's, and it is a night and day. Obama was actually trying to solve the problem. Trump is trying to be a racist person who gets rid of and tortures all the brown people he can see. Okay, Average Joe says the study found that the odds of being convicted of rape were higher for individuals with an immigrant background across all models. After judging for potential co-founders, these odds decreased but remain significant. Ooh, are we saying, Average Joe, that there is some validity here, or are we saying that immigrants get convicted of this because of a bias within the system? It was possible to link socioeconomic data to clinical diagnoses and criminal convictions, as well as information on individuals to nationwide register data. It's able to measure all aspects of diversity. So it seems, Average Joe, that what we're saying is that this is inconclusive. Okay. Sunnybrook says, thoughts on Bonnie Blue. Is she that lady who had sex with a bunch of dudes? Not really a political question, but I guess, to each their own, Direct Luminosity says, Republicans in Massachusetts tend to be basically the most right-wing Democrat. Unfortunately, at point, if there is a right-wing Democrat or Republican in Massachusetts, you really have to pay attention. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. Let's see here. Poke Pete says, I'm not rich and had much lower taxes due to new tax cuts. I'm a fan of less government oversight. Poke Pete, are you aware that the Trump administration has loosened regulations on chemicals in your food and drinking water? Because that's government regulation that they are getting rid of. Are you aware that the Trump administration has cut funding to programs that make sure that veterans have jobs and houses? That's government oversight that Trump is cutting. Sports fan says, are you Democrat or Republican? Just curious. I'm a Democrat. Let's see here. Clemens says, what do you think of socialism? If socialism is universal health care, I'm for it. Okay. Sunnybrook says, reform/restore is UK last hope. No. Reform/restore is bad. They are a far right-wing party that are scapegoating immigrants for problems that are caused by billionaires. So, Sunnybrooks, I encourage you to run as far as you can away from right-wing authoritarian parties. Nikki3 says, lying. Can you say a single thing that I have said that is inaccurate? Poke Pete? Sorry, Nikki. Poke Pete says, those are flawed systems with fraud, though. So Doge did not find any waste, fraud, and abuse, Poke Pete. I'm not sure if you are aware of that. But I think it's weird that you think it's better to have veterans be homeless than for there to be frauds within a program that helps, veterans. All right, so Nikki is blocked. If you think I'm saying something inaccurate, tell me what I'm saying that's inaccurate. But if you just say lying, and then when I ask you what's something I lied about, and you just say everything, that's not a really productive comment now, is it? Alrighty, scrolling down. Nico Goober says, should I invest in Dogecoin? No. Cryptocurrency is a scam. Bogey Pete says, the VA, I mean, lots of disability paid out for PTSD of non-active members. Bogey Pete, I gotta be honest, I think that whatever takes the least amount of money out of my pocketbook makes the most sense for me. And so if it's cheaper to allow some fraud at the VA than catching all fraud, I say let some fraud happen. I don't really give a shit. We've done studies on this, though. We know that this is the case, that you can do too much to try to stop fraud to the point where it's so expensive and so cumbersome for the people who are for the legitimate people who are trying to get those benefits, that's just not really worth it. Okay, Nem says, yeah, the easiest thing is blaming immigrants rather than fixing the system. 100% agree. Sandy Brooks says, my family is very rich, so reform/restore benefits us. Is that a base take, or am I being ignorant? I would not say that that's a base take. I think it's kind of selfish, Sandy Brooks. It's great for you as a rich person to get your taxes cut, but don't you think that that's kind of shitty that you are kind of condemning people to starve to death and not be able to afford health care and cutting social services so that rich people can have more money? It just seems kind of shitty to me. You're asking for a world in which you are going to have to pay more money to protect yourself from roving bands of homeless people because you just didn't want to pay a little bit more in taxes. PokeC, but I said tax cuts and you brought up the VA. I'm saying it's failing due to fraud, not tax cuts. No, that's inaccurate, Poke Pete. The VA is not failing because of fraud. The VA is failing because the Trump administration and Doge slashed their funding. And so yeah, if you want some resources on that, let me know. Just shoot me a DM and I'll send you information over to there. User a whole bunch of numbers says, how much of your income do you give away to charity? I don't have like an exact dollar amount or percentage, but I do a little bit every month. Poyraz says, what do you think about Turkey's two-faced Middle East policy? I don't know enough about it to talk about it. Sunnybrook says, I think my generation is the last hope, and I believe my grandkids will have no chance of a good life. I mean, I think the best thing you can do to try to fix the world for your grandkids is to not vote for right-wing parties. Sunnybrook, pay your taxes. Poke Pete says, is there a magic number of tax money that solves homelessness or hunger or all these issues? Yeah, 100%. I believe if we passed tax legislation in America that made being a billionaire illegal, so you could only be worth $900 million, not only would those people continue to have very nice and very luxurious lifestyles, but we would be able to eliminate homelessness, eliminate hunger. We would be able to regulate all these industries so that they're not poisoning our water and our food. We'd be able to stop climate change and have universal renewables, universal health care, potentially free public colleges, etc. Sahad says, I have a question about the Middle East. I may or may not be able to answer it, Sahad. Average Joe says, we all know that any population with high rates of poverty and mental health issues have higher crime rates. It's not simply because of their nationality. Yeah, I mean, there's also, do they have higher crime rates because they're over-policed? Do they have higher crime rates because they're overcharged and are given more punitive sentences because they are impoverished, a community of impoverished people? Sunny Brooks says, do you pay taxes in capitalism or communism? I think both. I'm not really sure. I don't think you can pay taxes in communism because you don't own anything to pay taxes on, right? Sahad says, if Kurdistan ever becomes a country, will the USA benefit or not? I have no idea. That's a tough one. Sunny Brooks says, what is Marxism? You can ask 100 people, Sunny, and you can get 100 different answers. The way that I look at Marxism is workers owning the means of production. And it doesn't have to be nobody's allowed to own anything anymore. It all belongs to the workers. It can just be, incentives for employee-owned companies or laws that say that the lowest paid employees deserve a seat on the board of directors and that the CEO is only allowed to make 50 times what his lowest paid employee makes, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Poke Pizza. I'm a bigger fan of local/state tax, much easier to enact positive change at micro versus macro levels. Completely disagree with that, Poke Pete. Like, because of the federal tax system right now, red states are existing at the benefits of blue state taxes. And so if you live in Alabama, you are living on money that comes from blue states. Additionally, you have worse healthcare outcomes and you have worse educational outcomes than in California. So why not just tax people on the federal level, and then we can have a bit more equitable distribution of those funds? Right. Direct Luminosity says, can't wait to vote for Democrats. It will be my first time. I'm so happy for you, Direct Luminosity. First time because you previously voted Republican, or first time because you are finally old enough to vote? Michaela Meme says, what is your top 3 favorite politicians in the U.S. currently? Oh, I don't know. There's a lot that I like. I would hesitate to pick a top 3, but I like me some AOC, Bernie Sanders, Mamdani, Cy Kotz, who is running in San Francisco, Jasmine Tallarico, who else? Porter, I like. Yeah, there's a bunch of really good ones. Mickey says, thoughts on James Tallarico? I like him a lot. CS says, Bonnie Blue and Melania Trump. Not commenting on that. Ms. Gonna Be Alright says, Warren Buffett / Berkshire paid $5 billion in taxes, said if 800 other companies did that, individuals wouldn't have to pay any. That is 100% accurate. Skater Dude, what is up? Wayne says, socialism always leads to communism, then totalitarianism. Lots of people die. So I don't know if that's accurate at all, Wayne, because we've never seen a socialist country and we've never seen a communist country. There are countries that call themselves that, but they're not actually that. So I think what we're living through in America is capitalism leading to totalitarianism and lots of people dying. Like we know that. Like that, we're watching that happen right now. All right, Sunny Nem says, but wouldn't the billionaires just leave the country if you tax them more? So that is something that billionaires often say, but I don't believe it. And also, it's never happened in history. Like a bunch of billionaires said that they would leave New York if Mamdani got elected, and none of them have. So it's like, you know. And if they try to leave, then we can tax their money as they're trying to leave. But again, I don't think they're going to leave. And if they do leave, like, fucking great, man. Do you know how many mom and pop stores would love it if Walmart left? Do you know how many mom and pop stores would love it if Amazon just fucking left? You know how many people would love to start an electric car company without the monopoly of Tesla being out there? Like, fucking hell, man. Get out of here. Get out of here. Aver Yaz says, is China capitalist? They're sort of a mixed model. It's mostly an authoritarian system with some private industry as well. I'm not really a China expert, but that's from what I understand about it. Okay, because I am 26, but I voted Republican, but I learned I never voted for a president, though. All right, well, I'm really happy to have you on the team. Direct Luminosity, welcome to the party, pal. Okay, Johnny Scarf says, thoughts on Obama not getting congressional approval for bin Laden's military operation. So I don't believe that's accurate, Pepe. I would need to double check, but I'm pretty sure that there was an outstanding directive to attack the Taliban. So he already had congressional approval for that, and that's the justification for all the drone strikes that Obama did as well. If anybody wants to correct me on that, let me know. But I'm 99% sure that that Obama had congressional approval for that strike. Pepe says, what do you think about Argentina Malay government give donkey meat to its citizens? That's what happens when you have libertarianism. Stephen Peterson says, do you think it was a good thing Elon stepped away from MAGA and is focusing more on advancing tech? I don't think that Elon Musk is like a good guy who does good things. And so I don't think that he's like a real benefit to any of his companies. I do not believe that he's actually stepped away from politics. I just think that he recognized that he is hurting his goals by being out there and out front with this stuff. And so now he's just doing it behind the scenes instead. Skater Dude says, red states are dangerous because of the blue cities in them. So that is inaccurate, Skater Dude. If you would like, we can discuss, you know, what are the benefits of living in blue states versus red states and shit like that. Quarta says, what do you think about Erdogan? I don't know enough about him, so sorry. Johnny Scarp says, he did not get any approval. Again, Johnny Scarp, I'm 99% sure that I forget the name of it. It was like the AUMF was already authorized for going after the Taliban. So anything that happened to the Taliban or in the name of attacking the Taliban had congressional approval. Mr. Benzel says, when the Iran war end? I've got no fucking idea. Guy Yolo says, what's your ideology? Sorry, I'm new. You have to apologize. I'm a progressive Democrat. Sandy Brooks says, I am a super rich billionaire and I left New York and I now live in Kentucky and shoot rabbits. I don't think that's true, Sandy Brooks. Let's see here. Sandy Brooks says, what is one thing you like about Trump and one thing you like about the Republican Party? I'm not going to answer that question. I don't think that it is. I don't think you need me to answer that to prove my objectiveness. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party and Trump have done untold damage to this country and world. I do not find it necessary to sift through that pile of shit for a silver lining. If somebody's stabbing me in the throat, but they have really nice eyes, do I have to admit it? Doesn't seem fair to me. Nestor says, what's your stance on Ukraine, Russia? Russia illegally invaded. Ukraine's doing their best to defend themselves, and we should 100% support them as well. Okay, Realist Approach says, do you think maybe in the near future USA and Russia will be closer while EU gets closer to China? I think that's probably unrealistic. Yeah, it depends on who is able to maintain control of the American government. Like, I think that if the Trump administration and all of the sort of like Russia-friendly acolytes therein were able to sort of like maintain unilateral control of the American government, then maybe that's a possibility. But yeah, I don't think that our interests are aligning the same way. Bogos Binted, good to see you again, says, you can't name one thing positive about the Republican Party, or do you believe that there are positive aspects but won't? I think that there are things the Republican Party has done that are okay or good. You know, like the Nixon created the EPA. You know, I'm not going to yell at that. But again, I do not believe that it is productive to focus on the positive qualities of the party that is allowing all of this fuck shit to happen. All right, somebody whose name I can't read says, is literally gone. We got no idea if the USA will get a better leader or a worse one. I don't really know what you mean by that. Nem says, what do you think about lobbying in America? It either needs to be eliminated or regulated. Cindy Brooks says, could you be friends with a Republican? I'm friends with many Republicans. Cindy Brooks says, rank these politicians 1 through 4. Stalin, Gestapo. No, I'm not going to do that, Cindy Brooks. Let's see here. Let's see here. My first comment is higher up. But literally the EU and the rest of the world won't trust the USA because of Trump. The relations is literally gone. Yeah. I mean, Trump's done a lot of damage to our relationship to the EU and our other allies, but those relationships can be mended if we just do the work. Mikhail Meme says, would you be surprised if Trump wanted his face on Mount Rushmore? No, not even a little bit. W. Page, my old college buddy, great to see you again, says Operation Warp Speed really advanced vaccine science, and that was trashed by anti-science info, 100%. Mark Nichols says, what's the Democratic chances of taking over the majority of the Senate? I don't know. Probably better than 50% right now, but I don't think that we should focus on political predictions. I think we should just do the work of creating the outcome that we would like. Average Joe says, when the long government shutdown ended, what was your opinion regarding why all of the Dems that voted to end the shutdown didn't have an upcoming election? I think that Chuck Schumer was trying to limit the damage to people that might have been angry at those Democrats. You know, if there are a critical mass of Democrats who are desperate to end the shutdown for whatever reason, and Chuck Schumer is able to convince just Democrats who are not up for re-election to take those votes so that the other members might not get punished by the base for that. Like, I think that's his job. It is his job to win those elections, you know? Okay, Cindy Brooks says, thoughts on Kim Jong-un unaliving his own brother in the airport? I mean, that's authoritarian shit for you, you know? Tamper Stamp says, are you Democrat or Republican? I'm a Democrat. Alrighty, let's see here. Okay. You know, Average Joe, I gotta tell you, I know that we go back and forth on this a lot about the Democratic Party being controlled opposition or not. Here's the thing. I think we all need to have the humility to recognize that we don't know exactly why or how certain decisions are getting made in the government or in the DNC. Now, we can say, like, it's really sus that happened, but we don't know for certain. Regardless, the outcome, the plan is the same. Like, the plan is still voting in the primaries for better politicians, and if they don't work, then voting in the general for better politicians, and that's going to be the Democratic Party. Like, we agree on that, you know. Okay, Bogos Binted says, do you follow Canadian politics? Very, very little. Any opinions on all the recent floor crossers who gave the Liberals a majority? I think it's probably evidence of how disastrous the Trump administration has been for authoritarians everywhere, even in Canada. They're losing elections because of them. Rusev says, what do you think about the closing of the Finno-Russian border? I mean, Russia is acting hostilely towards their neighbors, and so I think it would make sense for all of the neighboring countries to protect themselves. All right, CS says, who contributed more to the United States, William Henry Harrison or Donald Trump? I think every human being has contributed more to the United States than Donald Trump. Oh, excuse me. Alrighty, let's see here. Sunny Brooks, what is anarchism? I'm not sure. Sunny Brooks, rank the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore 1 to 4? No. Mihu says, what you said then was weird. I'm right wing and I will be. One wrong and bad person cannot change it. I don't really know what you mean by that, Mihu. Like, what did I say that you didn't like or that you thought was weird? And what do you mean by one wrong and bad person cannot change you being right wing? Let me know. Sandy Brooks says, do you think blacks can be racist? I mean, every human being, I think, has the potential to be racist. And I think if we're being honest, every human being does have some unconscious biases that could be qualified as racism. There are certain people who would say that in order to be racist, you need to be at the top of the pile. You have to be at the top of the food chain. And so because the black population in America has been marginalized since they were stolen from Africa and forced to come over here and do, free labor. It's the nicest way I can possibly describe it. They have never been in that position of power. Now, I don't like getting into semantic arguments about what is the definition of racism. So if you're one of those people that believes that you have to have power to be racist, then no, African Americans cannot be racist. But if you're one of those people that just believes that racism is just when you are prejudiced against another person because of their race, then anybody can be racist. Suyal says, is the U.S. war on Iran legal? No. Mihu says, Trump is wrong, but not the entire right wing. I could say one person is, so everyone is bad. So Mihu, I have never said that Trump is the reason why the Republican Party is bad. The Republican Party has been bad for a really long time. The right-leaning political philosophies have been bad for a really long time. And I'm happy to get into specifics with you about what I think are unproductive and damaging aspects of those philosophies and why left-wing philosophies are better. But I'm definitely not saying that Trump ruined the Republican Party and therefore nobody should be Republican because of him. I'm saying you shouldn't be right-wing because it is wrong to scapegoat immigrants and cut taxes for the billionaire class, shit like that. All right, average US, my point is if Schumer can be held responsible for organizing several Dem senators to approve the right-wing agenda on a budget, then it seems reasonable to assume the same exists for the War Powers Act. I think you realize that right after you admitted that Schumer probably organized the specific senators to vote that way, LOL. But don't get it twisted, we're still on the same side, just trying to broaden perspectives. Yeah, I don't believe that I ever tried to claim that Schumer wasn't directing specific Democrats to vote in a specific way. But I guess what I am trying to say is that we don't know who wanted to vote for what and who Schumer convinced to either change their vote or not. John Abbott says GOP isn't bad because of Trump's presidency. Trump's presidency happened because the GOP is bad. 100% accurate. But yeah, I think Average Joe, it's interesting that you have that narrative about Chuck Schumer and the War Powers Act, because Chuck Schumer is presiding over more Democratic senators voting against sending money and weapons to Israel than any minority leader or majority leader in Democratic history. And so I think it's interesting. I'm not calling you sus. I'm just saying we all have the choice, or at least social media is choosing for us, what is the framing that we're going to be focusing on. For example, after the first shutdown ended, the frame was Democrats cave, they're weak, they're fucking ineffective. And now that they're fucking standing tall and refusing to fund ICE, there's no narratives about how strong the Democratic Party is or how principled and how they're doing the right thing and they're really brave and courageous and they're fucking nailing it, So, maybe we need to recognize where we are biased and where we are, sort of open to receiving the new information. Again, I'm not talking about you specifically, Average Joe. I'm just saying that these narratives are out there and they attack us in insidious ways. Triska, Rabab, Muzz King, and Kim, thank you so much for helping me reach my second Finger Hearts goal of the day. Suyal says, if Israel can have nuclear energy, why can't Iran? I don't think that anybody should have nuclear energy. I don't even think America should have. Nuclear energy. You meant nuclear weapons, right? Yeah, nuclear weapons. I don't think anybody should have nuclear weapons. Okay, Mihu says, who is winning the U.S.-Iran war? Iran. Yusuf says, do you support Iran or the U.S. in this war? I don't support the war. And I don't support one side over the other. I just want the war to end. Velia says, are you in support of open borders? No, I don't think it'll work right now. Maybe sometime in the future. Bottom line, these goobers need to be primary agreed. Oh, 100% accurate, Average Joe. We are on board there. Okay. Mihu says, why is Iran winning? So Iran lives in Iran. They are not going anywhere. America had to send a whole bunch of fucking ships and troops over to Iran. It is costing us over $1 billion a day. Gas prices are going through the roof. Iran has had sanctions relief because of this war, because Trump is trying to bring down oil prices. Sanctions on them selling their own oil have been removed. They are making billions of dollars off of this war. They are making money from closing the Strait of Hormuz. They are fucking dominating, man. Like, they had a really old leader who was about to die, and America fucking bombed the shit out of them, and now they have a younger version of that leader who is even more radical. Their population was standing up against the Iranian government. They were protesting, and it was a protest that usually protests like that in religious theocracies only are in like cities and places of where students are, where they're like, maybe we should have like a different kind of government, But the protests in Iran recently were everywhere. They were farmers, they were conservatives, they were etc. Now that we have started bombing them and we're fucking murdering their middle schoolers with our bombs, now the population isn't upset at Iran anymore. They're upset at us. Now we're the bad guys again. So yeah, fucking Iran is kicking our fucking ass in this war. Let's see here. Sunny says gas prices went up 10 cents. Who cares? That is inaccurate, Sunny Brooks. Sunny Brooks is the woman that got unalived in her car was wrong from ICE, but the guy with gun was his fault. Yeah, Sunny Brooks, pretty sus in my opinion. Sophia, great to see you again. At what point do you think a government safety net start becoming a long-term reliance thing? I think that the way that government support becomes reliance is if a person cannot afford to get off of government assistance, Do you know how, Sophia, this is a little bit of a tortured metaphor I'm about to make, but you know how if you got like crumbs on a counter, if you try to like get the crumbs off like that, just like straight on, you're going to lose some crumbs like that way. But if you can get your hand under the counter, then all the crumbs will kind of like fall like down into the hand. That's how social safety net should work. It should work where you can go past the point where you need it. And then when you get off of the government assistance, then, then you're not going to be suffering because of that. Let me know if that makes any kind of sense. Because you said that gas only went up 10 cents and that it wasn't a big deal. Like, are you fucking serious? If gas prices go up 1 penny under Democratic administration, everybody loses their fucking minds and they get the pitchforks out. But a fucking Republican president can raise gas prices by almost $2 a gallon, depending on where you live, and then it's no big deal. Then we're downplaying it like, who cares? A little bit extra money for gas. I swear to fucking God, man. How many times I gotta say this? Republicans never get any blame. Democrats never get any credit. All right, Princess Mouse says, I wish U.S. would focus on improving the lives of its citizens rather than meddling in the business of other countries. I agree with that, Princess Mouse, with a couple of exceptions. I do think that that there are certain problems that we want to solve in other countries so then they don't become problems in this country, Right, Stretch says, the president doesn't control gas prices, Nancy Pelosi. Yes, Stretch, that is accurate. But the president can do things that affect gas prices. For example, starting a war in Iran. That means that Iran is going to close the Strait of Hormuz, and also that Iran is going to attack energy infrastructure in their surrounding countries, which is going to make other types of energy less available and more reliance on oil, which is now less available. Alrighty, let's see here. Suyal, I do not know enough about the protests in 1953 to talk on that. Youssef says, do you think a sudden deal will be made, or are tensions high enough for the war to continue again? I don't see the Trump administration doing anything smart to actually end this war. So I've got no fucking idea. Mihu says, what do you think about this Trump's Jesus-like post? I mean, it's just more religious posturing, hypocrisy, what's the word I'm looking for? Sacrilegious nonsense, from one of the least Christian human beings to have ever existed. T. Jennings says, I feel like the only people left in MAGA are those not playing with a full deck. I think that there's a significant number of people in there, but let's not discount the corrosive effect of propaganda, billionaire-funded propaganda and misinformation, information silos, shit alike that. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to start wrapping things up, everybody. Sunny Brooks says, do you agree with Kirk's assassination? No, Sunny Brooks, no, 100%. Cannot say that emphatically enough. I condemn all violence in the strongest possible language, without question. Without question. Do not assassinate people. Do not do murders, guys. All right. If you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we're all struggling financially right now because of the Trump administration, because of specific decisions at the Trump administration and mistakes that they have made. But if you have the dollars and you want to give it to me because you like what I'm doing here and you think that what I'm doing here is a net positive, then mechanisms exist for that to happen. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a day. At the $10 a month level, you get a very fun monthly incentive. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please reach out to me. I want you to reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you guys to be more involved and more informed about politics. So if there's any way that I can do that for you, use me and abuse me. Use me until you use me up. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. Link is in the bio. Or you can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is in the bio. The Discord is great also because there's a community there. There's also recommendations for books and podcasts and civic actions that you can take. If you're someone like me and you see what's going on and you want to help, if you go to my Discord, there are things that you can do to help listed there. There are organizations there that are already doing the work that desperately need people like you to join them. So please get out there and do the work, because us doing the work is the only way that we are going to be able to get out of this. There are good people in the government. There are good people in the Department of Justice, but they do not have the power or the resources to fix this shit on their own. They need our help. So get out there and do the work, everybody. And if you don't know what to do, hit me up. Go over to the Discord. The only excuse you don't have is that you didn't know where to turn, because you can turn here. You can turn right here. And let's see here. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Tomorrow's a maybe. I've got a doctor's appointment at 10 a.m., so I don't know what time that's going to be over. So we're a maybe on tomorrow, but so keep your eyes peeled. But other than that, we should have a regular streaming schedule for the rest of the week, unless, of course, my wife goes into labor, which she believes it's going to be this week. So I can't wait to see if her prediction is true. All right. Anything else to get into here? Alrighty, let's see here. Sophia says, so you think that people shouldn't immediately be ineligible for social welfare as soon as they earn more? Yes, 100%. Yes, 100%, Sophia. Phantom says, what's your political ideology? I'm a progressive Democrat. Sunshine Wildflower says, I'm helping with Xavier Becerra's campaign. Yeah, I noticed that he's doing really well in the polls lately. He's above Porter right now. I might have to change my support depending on how those pollings go. Pag W says, better dead than red. I don't think that's a very productive comment, Pag W. Would you like to ask a question, or would you like to leave? Tan Tai Lon says, is USA a religious extremist state right now? Kinda, sorta, an argument could be made. Like, the current government is being run by people who are either themselves or are aligned with Christian nationalists. And that is an extreme philosophy. And so, right now, the head of our military, the person who is in charge of the Department of Defense, is a guy named Pete Hegseth, and he's out there giving religious speeches to everybody, saying that we're involved in a new crusade. This is another holy war, and that's wildly irresponsible and also unconstitutional. So yeah, an argument could be made. I do not believe that the greater population of America is, religious extremists. All right, let's see here. Sophia, so just I very much agree with that, but like, would you support work hour requirements to become eligible? But what if people can't work? Sophia, do you have exemptions for there? I gotta tell you, Sophia, like my personal philosophy is that I think a person should be able to have a very nice life and never work a day in their life. And I know that's a little bit of an extreme position. I'm trying to normalize letting people not have jobs because if AI and mechanization work the way that the billionaire class is trying to make it work, there are going to be a lot fewer jobs out there for people to do. So I think we all need to be cooler about the idea of people not working and how not having a job doesn't mean that you are lazy or that or you're stupid or you're not motivated or you're trying to take advantage of the beneficence of the billionaire class, stuff like that. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for all the questions and the comments and the likes and the shares and the support. I very much appreciate y'all being here. Please do the work and be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I might see you guys tomorrow, depending on how my doctor's appointment goes. But very latest, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channels. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Goodbye.